Hello, and welcome to the CFSI Virtual Mini Symposium on Lithium-Ion Batteries. My name is Bill Webb, and I serve as Executive Director of the Congressional Fire Services Institute. As we all know, lithium-ion batteries are widely used in every sector of our society, and despite their many benefits as a power source, they can and do pose health and safety risk to our nation's fire and emergency services when problems occur with this battery. Today, we are joined by a group of distinguished speakers who will share their knowledge and information on important issues related to lithium-ion batteries. If you have any questions for our speakers, please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen to post the question, and we will answer them at the end of our program. CFSI thanks UL Standards and Engagement and the National Fire Sprinkler Association for sponsoring this symposium. We recently launched the CFSI Mini Symposium program to provide forums where leaders in the fire and emergency services can share information about prevalent issues impacting our nation's first responders to make the fire service a safer profession for our first responders. We thank each and every one of you for participating in today's program. We will begin our symposium with David McKnight, who will discuss the issue of micromobility. As the head of partnerships for UL Standards and Engagement, David develops partnerships to share safety science knowledge and to advance advocacy with corporate leaders, trade association leaders, policymakers, and consumers. He has spent several years building and expanding partnerships in his various positions. Before joining UL Standards and Engagement, David served as Vice President of Business Relationships and Partnerships for the Manufacturing Institute, the nonprofit workforce and education partner of the National Association of Manufacturers. Prior to that position, he led corporate relations and communications at the Agricultural Retailers Association, a trade association focused on legislative and regulatory issues. David also holds a BA in political science from Hampton-Sydney College in Virginia. Welcome, David, and thank you for being with us today. And I will turn the microphone over to you, and we're eager to hear about your presentation about micromobility.
Awesome. Well, Bill, thank you so much. And let me jump in here and share my screen. Thank you so much for that introduction. Let me set my timer to make sure I don't go over time here. But as Bill said, I'm David McKnight. I'm with UL Standards and Engagement. And as many of you know, the e-mobility market has really drastically grown over the last few years. There's a lot of benefits of that. They reduce cars on the road. They provide workers transportation and gig economy, and they help sustain help cities. And preserving EV scooters is really imperative to protecting against the fire risk that these devices carry that a lot of people don't know about. And so I'm going to go over kind of our work in e-mobility, why this is an issue, why the UL Enterprise has, or how the UL Enterprise has expertise. And then later on in the presentation, my colleague Bob McClelland will talk about similar work we're doing in aviation safety. Let's see the next slide here. All right, so for those who don't know, UL was born out of the 1893 World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago, which really ushered the age of electrification in. And so we have a very long and distinguished history of mitigating risk through standards development and safety testing. Next slide here. And so there's a key takeaways I wanted to get out of this. So we are a nonprofit organization that translates safety science into action through standards development, partnerships, and advocacy. Our standards really enable that innovation and trust by growing and convening experts to inform policymakers and regulators and organizations like this to make the world safer, more secure, and sustainable. And we are part of the UL Enterprise. And so that involves UL Solutions, which is a testing, inspection, and certification business, and ULRI, which is UL Research Institute, which is a very forward-thinking academic research institute. And all of our mission really collide when it comes to making the world safer, more secure, and sustainable. But we are separate organizations. I think that's important to know. Let me go to the next slide here. There we go. So really quick overview of kind of the issue at hand today. lithium-ion batteries, and we mostly call them rechargeable batteries because that's what most consumers know, really do carry some inherent risk, and that risk is thermal runaway. So when a device is damaged or poorly made, it can go into thermal runaway, which is basically an uncontrolled status where heat rapidly causes multiple issues from fire, venting, smoke, explosion, off-gassing. It's a huge risk not only to individuals, but property, but also the fire service. And so this is something that we have spent a lot of time focusing on, a lot of time building research and consumer insights around. And so this is very prevalent to the work we're doing in e-mobility because these devices have lithium-ion batteries and have been a number one cause of fire in New York City. And we'll get to that in a second. So I'm going to kind of walk you through a couple statistics that will just kind of bring some more awareness to this issue. So we did some great insights from our insights and data analysis team. 61% of consumers are unaware that lithium-ion battery products of what they even are. And that's a huge issue because if they don't know about the risk, they don't know how to maintain or care for these. 41% of e-bike and e-scooter owners report leaving their vehicle or their device to charge overnight. Once again, people don't think about these things. We work in this every single day. It's something that's top of mind for us, but most consumers, it's not. We've also learned that 53% of e-mobility purchasers use their device for work-related use. So it's not a leisure activity, but this is really having some major impacts on commerce and people's ability to get to work and to perform their functions. So it really is an economic impact as well. And so why does ULSE really care about this? Well, as a standards development organization, we have developed standards for a multitude of different areas, but three I want to highlight today are our e-mobility standards. So through our consensus-based development process, we have three mobility standards that we want to highlight today. These reduce the risk of battery fires, and they ensure these products are designed and constructed to rigorous safety requirements. So when an e-bike or scooter or hoverboard is certified to a UL standard, buyers are assured that these products, batteries, chargers, and electrical systems have been designed and tested to withstand conditions that the device may encounter. So you're drastically mitigating that risk. And these conditions can be high temperature, water exposure, vibration. Think about the use of an e-bike, particularly in an urban area. It's going to get a lot of jostling and thrown around. And so we want to make sure that standard is designed to help protect against that. And so that's really where our expertise comes in. You know, we've been doing a lot of work in the battery space for well over 30 years and really taken the leadership from a standards development perspective. Get the next slide here. So we're going to use NYC, New York City, as an example of a great case study of how standards and advocacy can result in some very impactful safety wins. So obviously, e-mobility has transformed the New York City environment. This is also happening in other cities across the country, but there was a lot of uncertified devices and inadequate public awareness. This goes back to almost 2020. And this caused a number of fires in New York City. And the number of e-mobility fires increased nearly 800% from 2019 to 2023, becoming the number one cause of fire-related death in the city. And we did, with our in-house team, a really excellent economic impact analysis that shows really what that has caused, not only from an economic toll, but human health and community toll. So I'm going to just quickly share some slides on that and really show the value of the way standards have helped mitigate that as well. So these are, this is not just a New York problem. I want to highlight that, but it's also becoming a national problem. And so it really started there, but that doesn't mean it's not going to move to other cities and has not already. Pull up the notes here. So what we've learned, so New York City's fires, e-mobility fires in New York City cost New York City $518.6 million in damage and loss from 2019 to 2023. The reported estimated number of fatalities cost $257.9 million and injuries of $220.7 million. Many of these fires resulted in property damage costing an estimated $40 million. And the New York City analysis also showed that e-mobility owners still report unsafe charging practices. This goes back to that the education awareness piece, but 66% of those in New York City charge them in a location blocking their exit, or once again, charge them overnight. And so New York City worked with the UL enterprise a number of years ago to bring awareness to this issue of e-mobility and fires. And the result of that was Local Law 39, which took effect on September 16, 2023. And basically that mandated compliance with the 3 UL standards I mentioned earlier. And we've seen since that a drastic reduction in fire and fire-related deaths in New York City, which is really showing that it is making a huge difference. And so what we did as an enterprise is look at that as a model. As these devices become more affordable, as these devices become more popular, this issue is only going to spread to other cities. And we've seen that. We see news stories every single day of an e-bike, a hoverboard, or a scooter causing fire in an apartment building, people's garages. How do we take ownership and how do we take some leadership to help mitigate this risk going forward? So we really want to take the safety science knowledge that we have and turn it into action. And that's what I want to highlight today. So because this is an emerging risk, we always want to push for voluntary adoption first. And a lot of those legitimate manufacturers are already in compliance, but there's a number of those who are not. And the reality is it's very challenging for a consumer to be able to tell what is certified, what is authentic, and what is not. And that's really where voluntary adoption fails, and legislation and regulation are going to be key pillars to help moving this forward. And so that's really where we've put a lot of our time and effort, is bringing awareness to this issue, but also how can we push this from a policy perspective? And so we've worked with a number of key partners from National Bicycle Dealers Association, League of American Bicyclists, Lime, Grubhub, CFSI, IAFC, and others to help bring awareness, but really push for federal policy, because what we need is consistency. What the industry needs is consistency, and we need something that helps prevent the bad actors. And so I want to give a quick update on what we've done from a federal policy perspective. I think many of you have probably been engaged on some of these issues as well. But the HR 973 passed the House this year on April 28, 2025. It is now in the Senate and has really sat there. It has gone through the Senate Commerce Committee, was passed unanimously. So we're really continuing to put pressure on key legislators to push this to the Senate floor for a vote. But in the meantime, we're still continuing to work with partners to bring awareness to this issue, to understand best practices, how we can help change behaviors, take a very holistic approach at promoting public safety on e-mobility. At the same time, we recognize that there's going to be, and there has been, some delay at the federal level. So what we're working on is building coalitions at the state level with some resources. And so we're looking at how we can take New York City as a model and work with other major cities where this is becoming a major issue. And so we've worked very closely with California and Georgia. We're working with Illinois, Massachusetts, New Jersey, Florida, Colorado, and New Hampshire. Also working with a number of cities as well, particularly where they have a rising incident of these. One of the other things we focus on too are the rebate programs. A lot of cities have rebate programs for e-mobility devices. We're not advocating whether or not you should have a rebate program, but if you do, does that rebate program require certification to UL standards? And this has been a great way to kind of bring awareness to the issue, but also eventually, hopefully, pass some local legislation that will drive some impact there as well. And so how are we doing that? So we've really partnered with a number of great organizations to help continue to bring awareness, to continue to drive advocacy. One that I want to highlight here is a recent report we did with the League of American Bicyclists. They have the Bike Friendly University program. And so we partnered with them to get insights from several bike-friendly university campuses on, do they have an e-mobility policy? And what we learned is most of them don't. And we presented this at their national conference in Washington, D.C., really solidifying ULSE as the convener to bring different people together to have these conversations and to see where there are gaps and where there are opportunities. And the goal of that is really to develop a model policy that can be used across the country until we have better federal policy. And so what we've learned from that is that 39% of bike-filling university campuses have daily use of e-mobility. We anticipate that number only going up. 41% have a formal e-bike policy. Most college campuses have actually resulted in bans. And there's also an infrastructure issue there as well. And so we're working to be that convening force to not only highlight the role of standards, but how can we also push for policy, not only at the federal, state level, but also at the campus level to make sure bikes are certified, to make sure there is awareness, to make sure people understand the risk, and make sure that they are using safe charging and infrastructure best practices. We've developed an entire suite of resources around our e-mobility advocacy. We have a great website. You can click on this QR code that will take you to that. But we have some great insights into how they're used, highlighting the risk, highlighting the awareness gap. But how do we translate that, once again, into action? We have a lot of great experts. So we have people who can talk about the technical aspect of the standard, or how we can partner with different industry groups to bring awareness, but hopefully drive advocacy as well. And that's why this group in the fire industry has been so supportive of these efforts, because they recognize this as an emerging issue. They recognize this as something that is not going away, but only increasing. So passing federal legislation only mitigates that risk, and it makes it much easier for the bicycle dealers. It makes it easier for the manufacturers to produce a product that is safer, that results in less fires, less property damage, less lives lost, and also promotes general safety as well. One thing I'd also like to highlight too for this group is that, our standards are developed in a consensus process. We have government, we have industry, we have a number of different stakeholders that participate in that development process. We simply convene them and manage that process. Anyone is welcome to join a standards technical committee, and you can click on this link to learn more. That is really critical for us, because when that standard is complete, we want industry buy-in. We want it to be used. We want people to feel like they had their stamp on it. And our e-mobility standards are really good examples of that. We have a number of manufacturers. We have a number of industry groups. We have a number of HJs and fire service. And if you're not part of a technical committee, whether it's e-mobility or other, we certainly encourage you to join and get involved in that, and other aspects as well. So I know I had 15 minutes, and I think I nailed it. But if you have any questions, please feel free to drop those in the chat, and we'll do our best to get to those throughout the presentation. Thanks so much.
David spoke about federal legislation. He talked about federal programs. So that's a great segue for our next presentation. It's actually a video. There is legislation pending in Congress that would help to improve fire and life safety in the micromobility sphere. So for our next segment, CFSI has put together a short video discussing the pending legislation on Capitol Hill titled the Setting Consumer Standards for Lithium-Ion Batteries Act. Again, as he said, that was approved on the House side. Now it awaits action on the House side. So for our fire service attendees, we encourage you to reach out to your members of Congress and urge them to support the bill. And if you're listening from Capitol Hill, we appreciate your work on this bill, and we look forward to working with you and other members of Congress and staffers to help get this bill across the finish line.
Lithium-ion batteries are a critical piece of technology that are increasingly used to power new consumer devices, including micromobility devices such as electric bikes and electric scooters. While lithium-ion batteries are a vital technology and serve many important functions, they also raise some fire safety concerns. These batteries can enter a state known as thermal runaway, in which they overheat and can catch fire or even explode. Ensuring that battery-powered products are held to appropriate safety standards can help mitigate the risks of defective products damaging property in fires and explosions, and even taking lives. This is why CFSI is pleased to support the Setting Consumer Standards for Lithium-Ion Batteries Act, H.R. 973 and S. 389. The bill would require the Consumer Product Safety Commission, or CPSC, to issue a final consumer product safety rule for rechargeable lithium-ion batteries used in micromobility devices. Specifically, the rule would require manufacturers and distributors of micromobility devices to comply with the applicable safety standards jointly established by the American National Standards Institute, the Standards Council of Canada, and UL. CPSC has been working on a rulemaking on micromobility devices, although there have been a few roadblocks, particularly in recent months. This bill would help ensure that a standard is created to help protect consumers and first responders across the country. The House version of the bill has already passed the House of Representatives and been sent to the Senate for consideration, and the Senate version was successfully marked up in committee. To take action today and support lithium-ion battery safety, visit CFSI's advocacy and outreach page to urge your senators to prioritize lithium-ion battery safety by co-sponsoring and passing the bill. Take action today for a safer tomorrow.
Anyone who's a believer in firefighting needs to fight the fires even before they start.
Firefighters are the critical connection piece to the community. The people look at us as a resource. This is the missing piece in a successful chain of survival for our fire victims.
This course will recap key fire safety concepts and explore the research that backs them up to equip firefighters to confidently communicate fire safety messages to the public.
There has been a gap for a while, so we're really excited to be able to fill in the spaces where they need evidence to support what their experience is.
The world around us is changing. We have to stay on the cutting edge. This course will be a tremendous tool by giving our firefighters the information they need to confidently share the information that FSRI has put together with the public in a way that the people can relate to it.
For our next presentation, I'm now joined by Bob McClelland, Senior Program Manager for Transportation Safety at UL Standards and Engagement. Bob is an aviation safety professional with over 2 decades of leadership experience in air cargo operations, regulatory collaboration, and hazardous materials management. He retired from UPS Airlines in March 2024 after a distinguished 34-year career, most recently serving as Managing Director of Safety, Compliance, and Dangerous Goods. From 2003 to 2017, Bob served as UPS Dangerous Goods Director, where he led the lithium battery safety initiatives, supported the National Traffic Safety Board's investigation into UPS Flight 6, and represented UPS at global forums, including ITA and ICAO. Bob, you're going to have to tell me what those stand for. He also led the airline's 24/7 hazardous materials help desk, handling over 250,000 calls annually. In 2025, Bob transitioned to UL Standards and Engagement as Senior Program Manager for Transportation Safety, continuing his mission to improve safety across the transportation network. His current work is informed by his leadership on U.S. Department of Transportation's Lithium Battery Air Safety Advisory Committee. So, Bob, we welcome you to our presentation today, and we look forward to your presentation on lithium battery transport. So, podium's yours, so to speak.
Thank you, Bill. I appreciate it. Hopefully, I can be as adept at David as at sharing my screen. So let's try this. It looks like we got it. So again, thank you for that warm welcome, Bill. Good afternoon, everyone. And I appreciate the background discussion. A couple of things I want to say about that. So at 34 years at UPS, at about the 14-year mark, I moved into dangerous goods, hazardous materials. And I was still trying to spell DG for dangerous goods at that time. So I was new into that role. I'd been there about a year, and RISPA, our SPA, who was the predecessor to PHMSA, Pipeline Hazardous Materials Safety or Security Administration, issued a final rule around the holiday season. So you know what staffing's like when the holidays get, and lithium metal batteries from passenger airplanes. And so that was my first introduction to lithium batteries after spending many nights in bed reading about these newly imposed regulations. And I really didn't know at that time that my career would be dominated by lithium batteries, but that's where we ended up. So when I moved into airline safety about 7 years before I retired, it was really interesting to learn that the safety part of the airline didn't have, both where I was and in the industry, didn't have that same understanding of lithium batteries. So there was kind of a disconnect there between what was going on in the hazardous material world and what was going on in the safety world. And so that really became my role on the safety side, was helping to kind of bridge that gap, bring people together, and create a better understanding of what the issues were. And then finally, Bill, you mentioned the Department of Transportation Lithium Battery Air Safety Advisory Committee. I'm going to talk about a program called TRIP today. That's our Thermal Runaway Incident Program. And so I just joined ULSE back earlier this year, but actually my involvement with the TRIP program goes back to 2019. All right. So a little bit about the TRIP program. So again, it's the Thermal Runaway Incident Program. It was built by the airline industry, really for the airline industry. And what it did is it replaced an informal sharing of data that was occurring between several airlines, actually 4 airlines, back before 2019. At that point, those airlines knew, hey, there's something going on with this thing called lithium batteries. Are you seeing it? And they were sharing emails and spreadsheets. And they came to ULSE and said, can you help? And so that's when ULSE took on that work, created a very tailored data collection process and portal. And today we currently have 37 airlines that participate, and that includes 9 of the top 10 US passenger airlines, 7 of the top US regional passenger carriers, the 3 top US cargo carriers in the United States, and then 18 other US and global passenger, charter, and cargo carriers. So what is this program? So it's a voluntary program, as this is aviation related. It's a voluntary program. We capture, we trend lithium battery incidents, and this includes near miss events. I won't get into that a lot today, but things that could have been a problem but turned out not to be. And we do it in basically 2 pieces, the passenger side and the cargo side. So if you think about passenger operations, you've got items that you carry on yourself. You put your cell phone in your pocket, it's on your person. You have carry-on luggage, which maybe you put your laptop in that. You have check bags. So you have these different types of methods to get items on the aircraft. So we were able to capture where or what type of path that the passengers followed. And it's not just on the airplane, but curb to curb. So from the time you step on the airport property until you reach your destination and you leave the airport, we're capturing information about incidents that occur in that realm. On the cargo side, you have cargo that's declared. It's marked and labeled, and it says, hey, I contain lithium batteries. But if incidents occur with that, we capture that information in TRIP. There's also undeclared. So there's a box of shipment that contains no markings, no labels whatsoever, that it contains batteries. If that has an event, we're going to capture that too. And the cargo side's a little bit different. It's not necessarily the step on the airport, step off of the airport. It's dock to dock. So in a lot of time in the cargo space, your package may be accepted at a warehouse for air transport many miles away from the airport. So we call that dock to dock. So we've got a little broader spectrum on where we're capturing that information. So what are the goals of TRIP? Well, the primary one is to provide accurate, and timely accounting of lithium battery incidents, so we can better understand the scale and the complexity of the safety issue. And then we want to develop knowledge, raise awareness, and increase transparency into the lithium battery safety issue. So we talked a little bit, Bill introduced the DOT Lithium Battery Air Advisory Committee. I think it was the FAA Reauthorization Act in 2018 actually is what mandated that committee be put in place. So we gathered at the time, I think there were 20 individuals ranging from aviation to manufacturing to safety organizations. ULSE was part of that. I was part of that as an airline participant. Labor groups, firefighting, and others came together in this group. And we knew that lithium batteries were a problem, but that's all we knew. We didn't know where that problem was happening. We knew aviation was a concern, how it was happening, what kinds of devices. And so TRIP and the development of TRIP really helped us narrow in our focus on what issues were occurring in aviation, where they're occurring, and what was happening. So one of the third goal of TRIP is airlines have a program called safety management systems. So by law, both in the United States and internationally, airlines have to have a program that identifies hazards and then finds ways to reduce the risk of that hazard occurring, and call it safety management systems, or SMS. They need data and information to be able to support SMS programs. So one of the things that we do with TRIP is, okay, so an airline gives us their information, we analyze it, we go through it, and then we play it back to them. We give it back to them so they can see their same data. It comes back maybe formatted a little bit differently with maybe some different analysis that's going on. And they also have access to industry data. So they know not only what's going on in their organization, but those organizations that are also participating in TRIP. So it supports the development of their safety management program. And then finally, with TRIP, we want to reduce some of the known risk areas. So we want to improve mitigation, reduce risk with passengers putting rechargeable devices in their checked luggage. So if you think about it, your checked luggage is going under the wing in the cargo compartment. There is no person there that can help with an issue there if you're on board the airplane, if you're in flight. So we're trying to get passengers to bring those above the wing into the cabin, where you've got a cabin crew there that can help if there's an incident. And another thing is a lot of the airlines are using fire containment products, and we're really trying to push the knowledge and the awareness of UL 5800, which is a standard that around the production and the ability of those types of products to hold and contain a lithium battery vent on board an airplane. I don't know if there's any data geeks out there. I wasn't one until I joined ULSE, and I get more and more into the data. This is a snapshot of our 2024 data. And again, it's just one slice. It's passenger and cargo incidents, thermal events that occurred in 2024. You can see a little bit how we slice up the data. We have passenger operations, and within the passenger operations, you kind of have the above the wing stuff, which is what people carry on their person and their carry-on luggage. So that's the cabin carry-on. We have check bags, so the things that are going under the wing in the cargo compartments. And then you have cargo. And typically when we're talking about cargo, not always, but typically we're talking about cargo aircraft. But cargo can include things that fly underneath you. So as most of you know, passenger airlines will carry cargo under the wing as well. So this slide depicts, again, 2024, the number of incidents that we collected in the TRIP database. On the passenger cabin carry-on side, you can see we had 90 events. On the checked baggage side, we had 5 events that happened with checked luggage, checked baggage, and then 15 events happened on the cargo side. So that's 110 thermal events that occurred in 2024. We also monitor things for issues like, did a crew member on a cargo airplane have an incident with one of their devices? Or were there, as I said, cargo on a passenger flight that had an incident? So we monitor for that as well. And we talk about incidents. Again, thermal events. These are incidents that involve fire, a violent rupture, explosion, or dangerous evolution of heat that would lead to those previous causes. So when we look at this data, this actually equates to more than 2 events in aviation each week. And okay, is that growing? Is that declining? It's actually up. Since 2019, the number of incidents are up by 15%. We talked about back in early 2019 with the DOT committee, we didn't know where these things were happening. We can just take a look at this data. Nearly 90% of the lithium battery events in aviation are happening in the cabin of the airplane. And that leads to other issues as well. What we found in our 2024 data is that 18% of the time, that aircraft is going through some type of a non-standard or non-expected event, meaning they had to deviate from their planned route, be it an in-air diversion. It can also be they were taxiing out to take off or taxiing into the gate, and they had to immediately return to the gate because of an issue. There's also unplanned deplanings that happen with passengers or emergency evacuations. So if you just think about it from an aviation standpoint, those activities have their own risk involved with them. So if you have to divert or evacuate, do an emergency evacuation because of a cell phone fire or lithium battery fire, that has its own risk involved with it as well. Again, we're not getting into a whole bunch of the slides, but I do want to tell you what types of devices actually cause the biggest problems. And in 2024, it was e-cigarettes. E-cigarettes were the #1 cause of events in our trip data collection, followed by power banks. So you hear that term kind of internationally, but battery powered chargers. So you bring that extra charger to charge up your devices. That was the #2 cause of events in aviation last year, followed by cell phones and laptops. So beyond collecting and analyzing data from airlines, David talked about this a little bit. We do some external consumer research, and we know that almost every passenger brings a rechargeable device on board. So I think it's 98.9, 99% of all passengers bring something on. And on average, they bring 4. So it's not just 1, it's up to 4 devices is what the average person brings on. David talked about earlier that 60% of people don't have any idea what powers their devices. 50% of Americans have no idea what a lithium battery is. They just haven't heard of it. Okay, so moving on, a little bit outside of the aviation spectrum, this is an issue beyond just aviation. And David talked about e-scooters, e-mobility. That has been a big concern in the past to aviation because those batteries that power those e-bikes and those e-scooters can be transported on aircraft and have caused issues in the past. But it happens in maritime as well. So just in June, a fire broke out on a ship on the coast of Alaska or off the coast of Alaska, the Morning Midas. It sank 3 weeks later, along with thousands of electric and hybrid cars on board. And the presumed cause was lithium-ion batteries. Back in September, the Port of Los Angeles was basically shut down for a time because a tractor trailer that had lithium batteries in it turned over, caught on fire, and yeah, it backed up traffic, and they ended up having to shut the port down. And so there's been a lot. There's been a lot of reports. Or there's been other reports of vessels sinking and the cause pointing towards lithium batteries. So the Morning Midas is not the first of those. And it's interesting with the Port of LA incident, and some of you may have more information than me, but the firefighters had to end up letting the fire burn itself out. And part of that was because they were concerned, they were so close to the port, they were concerned with the wastewater getting into the local waterways. And the other thing is you only have to take a look at your local news to see the numerous events where garbage trucks or dumpsters are catching on fire because of the improper disposal of lithium batteries. I'm here close to Louisville, Kentucky, actually in southern Indiana. Just a few months ago, one of the interstates was shut down. I'm like, what's going on there? it was a dump truck that had caught on fire because of the improperly disposed batteries. So the lithium battery issue is broad. It's across all segments of transportation. So again, pointing back to David, he talked about ULSE and what we do. Standards are our currency of impact and the basis for what makes us credible and an experienced safety advocate. So we're using our position to try to clarify our role in enabling innovation, growing trust, and promoting access. And before I review these three tiles above, I want to talk a little bit about collaboration. So we've done a lot of work on the passenger and aviation on the passenger side, and we're doing a lot more work right now on cargo and the cargo side. And we were in discussion with let's just call them an organization that does recommended practices for governments across the globe. And that director was just stressing the importance of cross collaboration and information sharing. There's a lot of siloed information, and the more we know, the more we all know, the better we are. So on the firefighter side, firefighters are more aware of the threats than a lot of other people. So share your knowledge on best practices for fighting lithium battery fires to better inform to inform better risk mitigation efforts in the cargo industry. On the government side, the proliferation of lithium batteries continues to increase. They're using more and more products. It amazes me at the things you'll find lithium batteries are in, and they continue to move and increase in different transportation channels. So enforcement of the laws, what exists today, and development of policies to prevent fires is what's going to help the supply chain keep moving or running more smoothly. And then finally, most consumers are, as we heard, unaware what a lithium battery is, let alone their devices and what's being powered. So we want to empower consumers and independent shippers with knowledge that will contribute to smarter packing and shipping decisions. So that's the end of my slides. And I do want to remind you that there's a Q&A button there at the bottom of your screen. So if you have questions, to submit those. And with that, Bill, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Sprinklers protect what fire will destroy. Whether you live in a house or a high-rise, protect it with fire sprinklers. Fire sprinklers buy time. Time buys life. Learn more at firesprinklersbylife.com.
Today, fires burn with unprecedented intensity and speed, largely due to the synthetic materials and the volume of items within homes. Because of this, there exists an unparalleled urgency for the installation of fire sprinkler systems. The NFSA is dedicated to the noble pursuit of safeguarding lives and property from the ravages of fire. Its mission revolves around advocating for the widespread adoption of the fire sprinkler, aiming to foster a safer world for all.
Our next speaker is Jeff Dunkel with the fire. He's a fire protection engineer at the National Fire Sprinkler Association. Jeff joined the National Fire Sprinkler Association as a fire protection engineer in 2021. His professional career started in the Oklahoma Air National Guard as an emergency manager. Jeff, thank you for serving our country in that capacity. After graduating from Oklahoma State University with a BS degree in fire protection and safety engineering technology, Jeff worked in both consulting and construction, giving him 17 years of experience in fire protection engineering before joining NFSA, much of which specialized in energy storage systems that utilize lithium-ion batteries. Welcome, Jeff. We always thank NFSA for its support of CFSI. As you probably know, one of our board members is the president of NFSA, Shane Ray, and one of our most passionate supporters of CFSI is Vicki Pritchett, who does a lot of the government affairs work for NFSA and works very closely with our government affairs operation. So we thank you. We thank NFSA, and we will turn the program over to you.
Thanks, Bill. As Bill mentioned, my name is Jeff Dunkel. I'm a fire protection engineer with the National Fire Sprinkler Association, and you're right. I mean, that's kind of the name of the game for us. We're passionate about what we do. We're excited to be in the industry and excited to provide this help where we can. And today I was kind of hoping to talk about our lithium-ion battery guide that the NFSA has provided. And so in my career, as you mentioned, I've been in fire protection for about 17 years, about 2013, 2014. I was asked at the time, what do you know about batteries? And at the time, the answer was, I don't really know a lot. And they said, well, you better learn because it's going to be a big deal. And just about from that day on, batteries have really just kind of took over my career. And it's one of those topics, as you guys have already heard, that it's new, it's challenging. In a way, it's kind of, as a fire protection engineer, it's our moon landing. So it's an exciting time to be in a fire protection engineer. It's an exciting time to tackle this new hazard we have to deal with. As I've gone through, in 2013, we knew that lithium-ion batteries were an issue and they would be a challenge. But we really didn't know to what degree at the time until we had some actual incidents, one in Arizona, and a few others. So at that time, really, it kind of took on a life of its own and grew. And now here we are trying to catch up with the technology. And that's kind of how it always is. The technology grows faster than codes can. And, our role as the NFSA, we're just trying to help everyone understand where we're at, what they can do, and better understand how to mitigate this hazard. And so one thing I've noticed, a lot of the times we have, these nationwide standards, new developments, new testing, it doesn't always get disseminated very well down to the local level. And so what the idea was behind this guide was to provide not necessarily guidance or not necessarily dictation, but more of an education guidance role. And one of the most common questions we get from a local fire marshal, fire department, contractors, engineers is, where do I start? A lot of the times they get a battery project and they just don't know where to begin. And that's really the goal in giving that base knowledge of a battery project or a battery hazard to get them started into properly developing that code plan or that mitigation plan. And so, where that starts is education, right? It starts with us showing why lithium-ion batteries are different than a typical fire hazard. Why you can't just treat it like any other fire. What are your options as far as mitigation, whether it's suppression, detection, separation, things like that. And more so, what about batteries changes the hazard? Because a lot of people think, okay, lithium-ion battery is a lithium-ion battery. That may be the case for a cardboard box, right? A cardboard box fire is the same, whether it's in a warehouse, whether it's in store, in a house or wherever. But lithium-ion batteries, there's so many different aspects that can change that hazard. Whether it's in an energy storage system, whether it's in a micromobility device, whether it's just being stored, manufactured, recycled. All of these things kind of give a nuance to the batteries and how that hazard kind of plays out. And so that's really the challenge, is understanding how that those different aspects affect our hazard, and how do we handle that, right? And where we don't want to over-engineer, at the same time we want to make sure we're comfortable with our mitigation schemes. And so we start our guide with talking about the battery hazard itself and what's different about it, and then we go into each individual application and talk about why that's different. And I'm not going to go into too much depth of education here. I'm really hoping just to highlight what we're showing in our guide, and if there's any questions, I'm here to answer them. And more importantly, one thing I wanted to point about this standard, or this guideline, sorry, is it's a living document. If there's one thing that's for sure, there's more information that's going to come out. Things are going to change. Things incidents happen, more data comes out, more testing is provided, codes change. And so this document is provided for free on our store website and for digital download, and we will update it periodically. I'm already working on some updates as we speak. So keep a lookout, and if you guys have anything to add, for sure, I would be happy to accommodate. So yeah, as I mentioned, the hazard of lithium-ion batteries varies. If you're using an energy storage aspect, whether it's a bulk storage, electrical vehicles, waste stream, micromobility devices, depending on how that battery is being either stored, applied, used, where it stands is going to affect how you would mitigate that hazard and how much of a risk you have, right? But that's not the only aspect, right? And there's things like battery makeup, chemistry, and things like that. And we do talk about that as well. But for example, energy storage systems, you have a situation where you're charging and discharging batteries on a continuous basis. And they may not always be cooled properly, or they age more rapidly. And when those do go into thermal runaway, you have a lot larger number of batteries. They're already at risk at thermal runaway. So that's different than a case where you have maybe an EV where the batteries are just contained in a vehicle, they're mobile, but at the same time, EVs have their own risks as well, right? They do get damaged, they're exposed to more of the elements. And so as you can imagine, the more applications you see batteries come in, the more information you need to know and how that hazard changes. One aspect is how the battery is constructed, right? For the most part, all lithium-ion batteries have the same makeup. They have an anode, cathode, electrolyte, and a separator. Now, what differs is that chemistry those anode and cathodes are made out of. Another thing that differs is how those anode, cathodes, separators, electrolyte is packaged, right? So you could have a battery cell that is somewhat like a AA battery, a traditional battery we're used to seeing, right? And those can range from very large, like soda cans, or like AAA batteries. And so depending on the application, you're going to have a different arrangement of battery, right? And so you have a prismatic cell, which is basically like a rectangular cell that where they fold it instead of roll it. And then you have a pouch cell, which is similar to a prismatic cell, which is the same thing, just it doesn't have a hard protective case, right? And as you can imagine, that packaging is going to change how adjacent battery cells are affected if we go into thermal runaway. So if I have a bunch of batteries just sandwiched together, the one battery going into thermal runaway is going to increase the risk of adjacent batteries going in thermal runaway. If I have a hard protective case, I may be better protected from physical damage versus a pouch cell where I don't have that, and I might be more susceptible to physical damage. So we do talk about all of the aspects of whether it's overheating, overcharging, physical damage, age, things like that can affect thermal runaway. And it's all a goal to try to get a base understanding of what is this thing called thermal runaway. And it's a buzzword, I know, but it's a thing that's going to stick around. It's going to be here for a while. Another thing we look at is how the state of the battery changes, right? And so whether a battery is fully charged or if it's at 30%, greatly changes the effect of thermal runaway, right? One description I was given is a battery at thermal runaway is like trying to start a fire with wet wood. You'll eventually get there, and when you do, it's probably just going to smolder, right? Versus a battery that's 100%, a slight miscalculation could cause a great release in energy. And the greater the energy, the greater the effect of thermal runaway. And whether when you're in storage or transport, a lot of the times those batteries are only in 30%, right? And that is a much different hazard than when I have an energy storage system, which they're all fully charged, being discharged, recharged, maybe overheating, things like that. So we don't talk about a specific battery manufacturer, company, anything like that. We do talk about chemistries a little bit. But like I said, the main goal is to kind of get a base understanding of what criteria you need to be looking at when you're trying to figure out how hazardous is my situation and how do I properly mitigate it. Another thing is the chemistries. So you might have a LFP battery, which is a lithium iron phosphate battery, and NMC, which is nickel, manganese, cobalt. Those are the makeups of what that anode and cathode are made out of. And those chemistries will change how much energy can be stored in a battery, right? So an LFP battery, as you can see here, stores less energy per kilogram than an NMC battery. In a lot of cases, the traditional thinking has been that certain chemistries are safer than other chemistries, right? And we are seeing evidence in both directions, right? Well, while a battery that holds more power may have more violent reaction but shorter reaction, but a battery that holds less per kilogram may have a less violent reaction but a longer reaction. So there's just a lot of different aspects you have to look at it. And there's no clear evidence that one battery is better than the other. The industry will go where it goes, and the name of the game is to store as much energy as possible. That's why lithium-ion batteries are so prevalent now. So that's the state of charge. I mentioned earlier, as you can imagine, if I have a battery that's at 30% versus a battery that's 100%, and I go into a thermal runaway event, that energy has to go somewhere. That's what's happening. The energy is escaping at a rapid rate. So if I have more energy, of course, the thermal runaway is going to be more reactive, more violent, more prevalent to propagate. And so that's one big aspect we have to look at when we determine, okay, how do I protect this? How much water do I need? Do I need INRAX? Do I need a spray directly on the device itself? Things like that. So all of this is to provide an overall picture and lead the user to a well-rounded mitigation scheme, essentially. And one of the few standards we have, unfortunately right now, there are not a lot of codes and standards out there directed to lithium-ion batteries. We're catching up, we're getting there. We're NFSA is helping out as much as we can to help develop those. But one of the first and one of the most developed is the NFPA 855, and it's specifically for energy storage systems. And while it's great guidance, it's good that we are getting developed standards out there. It's not the traditional standard, and it's hard for everybody on the local level to kind of understand what the intent is to get there, right? And unfortunately, right now the prescriptive criteria a lot of times is not used because it's just so onerous, right? The requirement is to provide separation between certain groups of energy. And provide separation from workspaces and things like that. And one goal we have in this guide is to provide that in a graphic form to illustrate, hey, if you're going the prescriptive route, this is what you need to do, right? And what I hope in the future, because most of the time, everybody wants to go prescriptive, right? Everybody wants to look in the code and say, this is what I have to do. Most projects, especially in the energy storage realm, are not that way. There's not enough energy density. They can't put in as much energy as they need to in a specific area and comply with NFPA 855 as a prescriptive standard. A lot of times what we see is a design basis based on testing provided by UL, FM Global, and things like, standard, engineered approaches, right? And so one of the future aspects is we're hoping to figure out how to properly guide that performance-based design. It changes so rapidly depending on the application, of course. So it'll take a while, but we'll get there. But for now, what we do have is at least illustrations of what is NFPA 855 looking for. Why, if I need to comply with 855, what do I need to do, and show me the pictures, right? And so as it goes, we hope to at least illustrate as much of that as possible. One aspect we look at in the guideline is parking garages, right? And that's a huge topic right now because we see so many more EVs coming about, and it's only going to grow. And so there is new data out. If you look at some of the changes now in the standard, the building codes, and even NFPA 88A, some of the standards require sprinklers in parking garages that didn't previously require sprinklers. Some of them require greater densities. So, for example, NFPA 13 now recommends that we use an ordinary hazard group 2 instead of what used to be group 1 in a sprinkler design density. That just, if you're not a sprinkler person, that just basically means more water. I have to put more water on the fire. And that was partially because of EVs, right? It wasn't only because of EVs. It was partially because that standard was developed when vehicles were largely metal, right? So now they're largely plastic, which burns greater, faster and hotter. And now they are EVs. So you're starting to see a trend of more stringent requirements in parking garages as a result of that. This graph here does actually illustrate that the heat release rate of EVs are very similar to internal combustion engines. So a lot of people think that you see the EV and think, oh, this is a giant fire hazard. Well, the data shows while it may last longer, it could last a long time. The actual heat released from that vehicle is comparable to an internal combustion engine. And so that's not to say the hazards are the same, right? They are different. They are to be responded differently, and we need to protect them differently. And so the goal is to get a full understanding. We're at least getting this data. Not a lot of public data out there right now, but what we do have, we've shared in the guideline. And also we don't just cover energy storage. We don't just cover parking garages. We do cover, in some extent, micromobility devices, other handheld devices, waste management, recycling, things like that. The challenge is with micromobility and handheld devices, obviously, being in the sprinkler industry and being a sprinkler guide, these devices are not always in sprinkler spaces, and they're mobile. So, but there are instances where I think there's some jurisdictions now requiring sprinklers where micromobility devices are being charged, and also greater scrutiny on handheld devices. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I think one of the biggest challenges is going to be the waste stream, right? And so we're having issues with recycling. Where do we do with these batteries when they reach the end of their life, right? And that comes down to education, right? We can't just throw them away. And we do have to mitigate the people that do just throw them away, because it will happen. We have to be able to provide recycling facilities and drop-off points, so these are properly disposed of, and those recycling sites and drop-off points are properly protected in case these off-spec batteries do fail. So that's really it. I just wanted to share with you guys, hopefully, some information about what we're doing at the NFSA. That we're here to educate more than anything. And like I said, this standard was developed with a committee, not just me alone. And it will be a living document. So we hope to continue to build this guideline as new technologies come out, as new codes and standards come out, as we develop things in the industry as a whole. And the goal really is to educate the local jurisdictions, contractors, the people that are actually going to be mitigating these hazards and responding to these hazards, right? And ultimately, education is important. Like I said, this is our moon landing. We're excited about it, and it's a challenge, but why do it if it's not challenging? Thank you.
So at this time, if I can bring the panelists back, we will begin our Q&A session. And again, I just can't thank them enough for participating. I personally have learned an awful lot from this presentation. I didn't realize how broad-based or the depth of this issue, and it's certainly been a learning experience for me, and hopefully it's been a learning experience for all of you. So the first question is, how can fire departments stay informed about emerging trends in lithium-ion battery technology and their potential impact on fire safety?
Well, I can start on that, Bill. I mean, one place I would offer is our website, ulse.org. We have a host of information there, really tailored. There's a whole search functionality on lithium batteries, be it research and work that David talked about, or on micromobility, or what's going on from a consumer perspective. There's lots of opportunities to get that information there. Certainly the aviation side as well. ulse.org.
Yeah, and I can say from the fire sprinkler aspect, I'll answer two questions here, because there's another question that says, where can I access the NFSA guide? So our website and our story, nfsa.org, we have this guide available for free download. And to answer the question, how can fire departments stay informed? That hit it on the nail. The reason why we wanted to provide this guide in the first place, it's because it is difficult to disseminate all the information that's out there and have it to where it's a palatable form, right? And so hopefully, like I said, we can keep on top of things and keep it up to date. And as things develop and as things trend, we can try to translate it and put it into more of a comprehensive form.
Okay. We lost David, but we picked up Scott. So Scott, can you briefly introduce yourself?
Yep. My name's Scott Genzink. I'm on the partnership and policy team at UL Standards and Engagement, and David is my boss. So I fill in when he's unavailable.
Okay. Pressure's on, pressure's on.
Exactly.
So, I got a question myself. David did mention something about the New York City law. Are you using that as a template in other jurisdictions, whether at the local level or at the state level?
Yeah, we have model legislation up on our website, actually. The best website for folks to look at is e-bike safety. Let me make sure I get it exactly right, because I don't want to give it the wrong way. ebikeSafety.ul.org. I think it is. Maybe it's ulse.org. Let me make sure. But I'll drop it in the chat. And on that website, we have a toolkit for local legislation as well as some model legislation. And yeah, that's ebikeSafety.ulse.org. And I would encourage anyone who wants to take this for action to talk to their local legislators, to look to our model legislation and reach out to us if there's any questions or things we can do to be of assistance.
Okay. And when you're talking about advocacy, you actually need some leader, to facilitate and to organize. So on this front, on these specific issues, is UL taking the lead? Are you the confluence where you're bringing all the disparate groups and individuals together on that? So you have a unified voice, unified strategy?
We have found ourselves oftentimes taking that leadership position, but we certainly can't take credit for all the good work that's being done. So in New York specifically, I would say the local fire safety officials really played the leadership role, and we were able to support them. So both David and Bob touched on the fact that we do some insights work in-house here at ULSE, and they do a lot of the consumer research, and they were able to figure out a general cost of how much the lithium-ion battery fires had actually cost New York City in terms of property damage, first responders, having to go out to places and put out fires. So really, a lot of times I would say it's a partnership between us and fire safety officials, whether it's local fire departments like the chief of the FDNY took a big leadership role in this. Other places we have state fire marshals who are really helping to push the narrative with their legislators.
Okay. Somebody asked a question about the codes and standard process. I think it might have, I don't know if it was David or Bob that hit on that, and David, Jeff for that matter too, but how can the public and the fire service get involved?
Yeah, I might defer to Jeff on this one quickly because he probably does more work with the AHJs than I do. We have folks at UL Solutions, our for-profit side, that handle a lot of those AHJ relationships, but I'll let Jeff take a first crack at it.
Yeah, no, so that's a good question. I'm glad it's a local official aspect because in the codes and standards development process, there's public meetings, right? You can you have to sign up to be notified of the specific standard you're looking at. But in a PA in particular, even the ICC are very hungry to have local enforcers involved in the process. It's always difficult to get local jurisdictions to participate in the code development process and provide that information about what they're seeing locally. So if you can't be on a committee, you can still join as a guest and you can see where this information is coming from. And that's the most important thing about it. So like the 855 meetings, and we have a new NFPA standard called NFPA 800, which is a battery safety standard. Those are all public. And you can provide input, and you can also see where that input is coming from. And you can see the meeting minutes. You can see all the development in real time, basically. A couple weeks after. But no, the ICC, the NFPA process is all open, and involvement is encouraged, especially on the local level.
This concludes our first session on lithium-ion batteries. We hope you gained something valuable from this experience. We also want to thank our speakers, Bob, Dave, Scott, and Jeff, for their participation and the sponsorships we received from their organizations, UL Standards and Engagement, and the National Fire Sprinkler Association. To learn more about CFSI and our mission in Washington, D.C., we encourage you to visit our website at www.cfsi.org. If you have any questions, please send us an email at update@cfsi.org. Thanks and stay safe.